Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back to the summer of 1966, into the life of Bob Dylan at the height of his fame and the moment everything suddenly stopped. You'll see what it meant to vanish from the world stage for reasons no one could quite explain, when silence itself became the only way to survive. So let's begin. You stop being Robert Zimmerman the moment you learn that truth doesn't sell, mystery does. It happened somewhere between Hibbing and Minneapolis, in that quiet space where ambition meets self-erasure. You're 19, 20 maybe, and you realise the kid from the Iron Range with the nice Jewish family doesn't fit the songs you want to sing. So you kill him. Not literally, though some days it feels close. You just stop mentioning him. Stop bringing him up at parties. Let him fade like an old photograph left in the sun. In coffee houses thick with cigarette smoke and pretension, you perform like a ghost of someone older. The voice comes out weathered, ancient, borrowed from Woody Guthrie's Dust Bowl records. You've listened to those albums so many times the grooves are memorised in your bones. You don't sound like yourself. That's the point. You sound like you've lived 3 lifetimes already, freight trains, labour camps, the whole American mythology. The crowd leans in. They want to believe you've suffered. You let them. You invent past lives the way some people collect stamps. A boxcar here, a carnival there, songs you never heard but swear you wrote. You talk about riding the rails, even though the closest you've come to a freight train is watching one pass through Hibbing on a Tuesday afternoon. But the lie sounds better than the truth. The lie has texture. You're learning that authenticity is just a convincing performance of inauthenticity. Bob Dylan becomes a suit of armour you slip into every morning. At first, it feels like costume jewellery. Cheap, obvious, waiting to be exposed. Then slowly, imperceptibly, it starts to fit. The armour moulds to your shape. Or maybe you mould to the armour's shape. Some nights you're not sure which. You catch yourself responding to Bob faster than Robert. You start believing your own stories halfway through telling them. The mask grows skin. Each show becomes a test. You stand under those weak coffeehouse lights, harmonica wailing, and you wonder, how much can they believe before they notice you're bluffing? How far can you push the mythology before it collapses? But they never call your bluff. They lean closer, they take notes, they tell their friends about this kid who sounds like he's seen everything. You realise something crucial. They don't want truth. They want an oracle. They want someone who speaks in riddles and prophecy, someone who carries the weight of history in his voice. Truth is boring. Truth is a Jewish kid from Minnesota who likes Little Richard. Mystery is a drifter who emerged from nowhere with songs that sound like they've existed forever. The headlines start calling you voice of a generation. You read that phrase and nearly laugh. You don't even believe in generations. You believe in songs, maybe. In rhythm and rhyme and the way a good line can lodge in someone's chest like shrapnel. But generations, that's just marketing. That's just people trying to make sense of chaos by drawing lines around it. The harmonica squeals like a lie told too often, but they cheer anyway. That's when you understand. The sound doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't even have to be good. It just has to be convincing. Your voice cracks and rasps, sandpaper dragged across wounded wood, and they call it authenticity. They call it raw. They call it the sound of truth. You want to tell them truth sounds nothing like this, but you keep your mouth shut and let the harmonica do the talking. The more they worship, the less you exist. It's a trade you didn't know you were making. Every article, every photograph, every person calling you the voice. They take a piece of the real you and replace it with their idea of you. Soon, there's more myth than man. You look in mirrors and see a stranger, not the Bob Dylan stranger, that one you understand. But underneath that, there's supposed to be Robert Zimmerman, and he's fading too, becoming translucent, ghost behind a ghost. You start sleeping with your shoes on just in case you need to run, not from the law or from danger, but from definition. From the moment they finally pin you down and say, this is what you are. You can feel it coming, that moment of crystallization. Once they name you completely, you're finished. You'll be a statue, a fixed point. Everything you've built will calcify into something you can't escape. You learn the only way to stay alive is to keep vanishing. Not physically, or you show up to gigs, you show your face, you sign the contracts, but you vanish in other ways. You refuse to be the same person twice. You shift and pivot and contradict yourself with such frequency that no one can draw a clear picture. You're cubist, all angles and fragments, never one complete image. Friends ask what you're running from. You don't know how to explain you're not running from anything. You're running towards something you can't name, or maybe you're just running, and the direction doesn't matter as long as you're in motion. Sharks die if they stop swimming. Maybe myths work the same way. Late at night, alone in whatever apartment or hotel room you're crashing in, you sometimes whisper your real name, Robert Zimmerman. You say it 3 times like a spell, like maybe you can summon him back, but he doesn't come. He's buried too deep now, under layers of Dylan, under folk songs and fake histories and a voice that isn't quite yours anymore. The audiences grow, the stages get bigger, the legend feeds on attention and grows fat. You stand in front of hundreds, then thousands, and you feel more alone than you ever did in Hibbing. Because they're not looking at you. They're looking at what they think you are. They're looking at a reflection that has nothing to do with the person holding the guitar. You sign autographs as Bob Dylan, you cash checks as Bob Dylan, you'll probably die as Bob Dylan. Robert Zimmerman becomes a footnote, a piece of trivia for the obsessives. Did you know his real name is... But no one cares about real names. Real names are for driver's licenses and tax forms. Stage names are for immortality. Sometimes you wonder what would have happened if you'd just stayed Robert, if you'd sung these songs without the costume, without the mystery. But that thought never lasts long. You know the answer. Robert Zimmerman would have been another talented kid from Minnesota. Might have had a nice career. Might have taught music at a college somewhere. Lived a quiet life. Died unnoticed. Bob Dylan gets to live forever. Robert Zimmerman gets to be free. You can't have both. So you choose. Every morning you choose. You put on the armour and walk into the world and perform the greatest con in American music. You become the thing they need you to be, all while staying just out of reach. Close enough to touch, too far to hold. The harmonica wails again. The crowd erupts. You smile. Not because you're happy, but because smiling is part of the show. And the show must go on. The show's the only thing left that feels true. You tell them your name is Elston Gunn. It comes out smooth as butter, like you've been saying it your whole life. The name sounds vaguely southern, vaguely cool, exactly what a rock and roll piano player should be called. Never mind that you've been Robert Zimmerman for 19 years and Bob Dylan for maybe 6 months. Names are cheap. Identity is cheaper. You claim you played piano for Little Richard. It's such a specific lie that people believe it. Who would make that up? The truth is you haven't even seen a piano up close in months, unless you count the beat-up upright in the corner of Dinkytown coffee shops. But you've listened to Little Richard enough times to fake the attitude, and that's what matters. Confidence sells better than competence. The first time you sit down at a piano in front of people, you sweat through your shirt. Your fingers stumble over keys like a drunk stumbling home. But the lights are dim and the crowd is drunker than you are, and they cheer anyway. You learn something valuable. Most people can't tell the difference between authentic and authentic sounding. They just want the story to make sense. You fake your way through shows, sweat glistening under cheap lights, praying no one hears the mistakes. Every wrong note is a prayer answered when no one boos. You pound the keys harder to cover your uncertainty. Confidence through volume, the American way. Someone in the back yells, "Yeah," and you think, I'm going to get away with this. Lying becomes your apprenticeship in reinvention. Not small lies. Those are for amateurs. Big lies. Foundational lies. You don't just adjust your biography, you rewrite it from scratch. You're an orphan. You're from New Mexico. You rode with carnival workers. You learned harmonica from a black blues man in Oklahoma. None of it happened. All of it sounds right. You sleep on couches and spin stories about the road that don't exist. Someone's apartment in Dinkytown, someone's floor in St. Paul. You wake up with carpet patterns pressed into your cheek and immediately start working on your mythology. Yeah, I just got in from Chicago, you'll say, even though you've been sleeping in Minnesota for 3 weeks. The scene there is wild. Each new lie sharpens the blade. You're learning craftsmanship. The world doesn't reward truth-tellers, only good actors. Honesty gets you a pat on the back and a job at your father's appliance store. Deception gets you destiny. You choose destiny every time. You bury Zimmerman somewhere between Duluth and destiny, not with ceremony or regret. You just stop mentioning him. Stop bringing him home for the holidays, metaphorically speaking. Let him sink like a stone in dark water. Sometimes you wonder if he's down there drowning, but mostly you don't think about it. You're too busy being someone else. New York eats kids alive, so you show up pretending you're immortal. You walk into Greenwich Village like you own the place, even though you can barely afford coffee. You've got $3 in your pocket and infinite audacity in your chest. That ratio turns out to be enough. The folk scene smells like coffee grounds and self-importance. Everyone's trying to be authentic, which means everyone's performing authenticity, which means everyone's lying. You fit right in. You're just better at it. You don't pretend to be authentic. You pretend to be mysterious. There's a difference. You tell reporters your parents are dead. Some journalist asks about your family and you just kill them. Right there in the interview. They died when I was young, you say, voice steady as stone. It makes better copy than my dad sells appliances in Minnesota, and we have a complicated relationship. Dead parents are romantic. Living parents are paperwork. Your actual parents read these interviews. You imagine your mother reading that she's dead. You don't call to explain. What would you even say? Sorry, Mum. I needed to be an orphan for the mythology. Some sins are too absurd to apologise for. You don't feel guilt, only momentum. The lie works, so you keep singing it. Guilt is for people who look backward. You're too busy running forward to check the damage in your wake. Besides, guilt implies you had a choice. You didn't. Or at least that's what you tell yourself at 3 a.m. when sleep won't come. The village accepts you because the village is full of people running from something. Real names are rare here. Everyone's a reformed version of somebody else. You're just more honest about your dishonesty. You don't hide that you're hiding. That's your trick. You play basket houses, pass the basket, hope for quarters. You make enough for eggs and cigarettes. You sleep in friends' apartments, always someone's couch, always temporary. You're building a reputation as a rambler, but really you're just broke. Poverty looks like poetry if you squint. Someone asks where you learned to play like that. Around, you say. Perfect answer. Vague enough to mean anything. Specific enough to sound true. You're learning the language of evasion. Speaking it fluently. You meet other liars, other reinventors. Everyone's got a story. Everyone came from somewhere else and became someone new. But most of them keep one foot in their old life. They'll mention their real hometown, their real name if you push. You never do. You've committed fully to the bit, both feet in the fiction. At night, alone with a guitar, you practice your mythology. You say your fake biography out loud, testing how it sounds. You memorize the lies until they become muscle memory. Someone asks about your childhood and the answer comes out automatic. Trains, dust, poverty, blues. You don't even have to think anymore. The best lies contain kernels of truth. You really do love Woody Guthrie. You really did feel trapped in Hibbing. You really do want to make music that matters. You just rearrange the furniture of your life until it looks more interesting. Same pieces, better staging. You start believing your own stories halfway through. That's when you know you've arrived. When the lie and the truth blur until you can't tell them apart. When Elston Gunn feels as real as Robert Zimmerman ever did. Maybe more real. Maybe Robert was the fake name all along, and you're just now discovering who you really are. Someone in the village starts calling you Bob Dylan. You don't correct them. You let it stick. Elston Gunn was practice. Bob Dylan is the final form. 3 syllables, rhythmic, memorable, vaguely poetic. Could be anyone. Could be no one. Perfect. You abandon Elston like you abandoned Robert. Names are tools. When one stops working, you pick up another. No sentimentality, no looking back. Just forward motion and reinvention. Years later, someone will dig up the Elston Gunn story. They'll think it's charming, this early experiment in identity. They'll write think pieces about it. You'll read them and smile. They think Elston was a character you played. They don't understand. Elston was practice for a lifetime of character playing. He was rehearsal for the long con of being Bob Dylan. The best part? Nobody cares that you lied. They're grateful. The truth would have been boring. The lie made them feel something. You walk into Columbia's office, 20 years old and half-starved, and walk out a myth in progress. The building is all marble and old money, the kind of place that would have terrified you last year. Now you just fake your way through the door like you own it. Confidence is just fear with better posture. John Hammond sits behind a desk that cost more than every instrument you've ever owned. He's a legend. Discovered Billie Holiday, Count Basie, all the greats. And now he's looking at you, this scrawny kid from Minnesota, like you might be next. You want to laugh. Instead, you stare back like you expected this all along. Hammond bets on you. Everyone else at Columbia calls you Hammond's Folly. You hear the whispers in hallways, see the sceptical looks from executives. They think he's lost his mind signing some nasal folk singer who can barely carry a tune. But Hammond's got ears they don't have. He hears something in the sandpaper rasp of your voice. Or maybe he just loves a good gamble. Your voice grates like sandpaper on raw wood. You know this. You're not stupid. You've heard yourself. You sound like you gargle with gravel. Like your vocal cords are held together with barbed wire and spite. But you also know how to use pain as percussion. Every crack in your voice is intentional. Every rasp is rhythm. You don't sound pretty. You sound true, or true-ish. Close enough. In the studio, the first time feels like church. All that equipment, those big reels spinning, red lights glowing. You close your eyes and let imperfection become your signature. They want to do another take. You say no. The mistake is the point. The wobble in your voice. The slightly off-time harmonica. That's where the humanity lives. Polish it, and you kill it. The engineers look confused. They're used to recording people who want to sound perfect. You want to sound like you're about to fall apart. There's a difference. Falling apart is interesting. Perfect is boring. Perfect is dead. You're aiming for alive, even if that means messy. The machine wants something to sell. You give it confusion wrapped in prophecy. Songs that don't quite make sense. Lyrics that twist and contradict. They want a product they can market. You give them a riddle they can argue about. Better to be discussed than understood. Understanding is the death of mystery. Your first album sells about 5,000 copies. Hammond takes heat for it. You should feel bad. You don't. 5,000 people owning your voice feels like a miracle. Besides, failure is a better teacher than success. Success makes you lazy. Failure makes you hungry. Fame signs the same contract as the devil. Eternal exposure in exchange for your soul. You're starting to sense this even before the fame arrives. You see it in Hammond's eyes, and the way executives talk about building your brand. They don't want you. They want a version of you they can package and sell. You're just the raw material. The second album changes things. Blowin' in the Wind catches fire in ways you never expected. Suddenly everyone knows your name, not Elston Gunn, not Robert Zimmerman, Bob Dylan. The fake name becomes the real one through sheer repetition. The more they print your face, the less you recognize it. Magazine covers, newspapers, television, every image takes something. It's like they're making photocopies of your soul, and each copy is a little less vivid than the last. You look at yourself on the cover of Time and think, who is that? You smile for album covers but whisper to yourself, don't believe it. It becomes your mantra. They point cameras, you smile. You perform the role of Bob Dylan folk singer, but inside you're chanting, this isn't real. Don't believe it. Stay loose. Stay ready to run. Every chord recorded is another chain tightening. You feel it physically. Each session, each song committed to tape, each album released. They're building a cage around you. A cage made of expectations and definitions. They're trying to figure out what Bob Dylan means so they can sell more of it. You're trying to make sure Bob Dylan never means just one thing. The folk purists claim you as their own. You're the voice of the movement, they say. The next Woody Guthrie. You want to scream. You love Woody, but you're not him. You're not anyone's successor. You're not even sure what you are. You start to realize you didn't get discovered. You got captured. Hammond thought he was finding talent. Columbia thought they were signing a folk singer. Really, they caught something wild and put it in a zoo. Now they're charging admission. The money helps. You're not pretending otherwise. You can afford food now. You can pay rent without busking or borrowing. But money's just another chain. They pay you, so they own you. That's how it works. Every check is a leash. You record more songs. They love the times they are a change in. It becomes an anthem. People march to it, protest to it, use it to define their generation. You're happy they like it. You're also terrified. An anthem is a prison. Once something becomes iconic, you can't touch it. It stops belonging to you. They want you to explain the songs. Journalists ask what they mean, what you were thinking when you wrote them. You give different answers every time. Not because you're being difficult, though you are, but because the songs mean different things to you every day. How can you explain something that won't sit still? You realise the industry doesn't want art. They want content. They don't want you to grow or change or surprise them. They want you to be the thing they paid for, consistently, forever. Record the same album 12 times with slightly different words. Be the voice of protest until protest isn't profitable anymore. You smile in interviews, you shake hands, you sign autographs, but you're planning your escape before the cage fully closes. You're already thinking about electric guitars, about rock and roll, about anything that isn't folk music and earnest college kids who want to change the world with acoustic guitars. They call you a spokesman. You never asked for the job. You just wanted to write songs. Now every word you say is analysed, interpreted, used as evidence in culture war arguments you didn't even know were happening. You've become a symbol. Symbols don't get to be human. The studio sessions get longer. More songs, more albums, more product for the machine. You're producing at an inhuman pace because you're terrified of slowing down. If you slow down, they'll catch up. They'll define you. They'll trap you in place. You look at your reflection in the studio glass. A skinny kid with messy hair stares back. He looks tired. He looks like he's running from something. He is. He's running from the thing they're turning him into. He's running from Bob Dylan. The irony isn't lost on you. They call you saviour of the movement. You just wanted to write about wind, about death, about highways and lovers and the way light hits a window at dawn. But now you're supposed to have answers. You're supposed to lead them somewhere. You don't even know where you're going yourself. Protest crowds chant your words like gospel, and it makes your skin crawl. They sing Blowin' in the Wind with their eyes closed, hands raised like it's a hymn. You wrote it in 10 minutes on a couch. It's just questions. You don't have answers. But they've decided you're a prophet, so questions become scripture. You never asked for followers, just you got pilgrims. They show up at shows with earnest faces and acoustic guitars wanting wisdom, wanting you to tell them how to fix the world. You want to tell them, I'm 23 years old and I lie about my past for fun. I'm not your messiah. I'm barely functional as a human being. Civil rights marches use your songs. Anti-war rallies blast them through speakers. You're glad. You believe in the causes, but you also feel the walls closing in. Every time someone calls you the voice of a generation, another brick gets laid. They're building a monument around a living person. You can feel yourself suffocating inside their expectations. When you plug in that Fender at Newport, the boos sound like thunder. July 1965, the Newport Folk Festival. You walk on stage with an electric guitar and the crowd loses its mind. Not in a good way. They're booing. They're shouting. Pete Seeger allegedly wants to cut the power cables with an axe. You've committed heresy. You've betrayed the faith. You grin into the mic and say, play it loud. It's not defiance, though it looks like defiance. It's not rebellion, though everyone calls it rebellion. It's escape. It's oxygen. You're drowning in their definition of who you should be, and the electric guitar is a life raft. You grab it and hold on. The sound is enormous, distorted, aggressive, everything folk music isn't supposed to be. The band behind you is tight, professional, loud. Mike Bloomfield's guitar cuts through the boos like a knife. You can barely hear yourself sing over the noise. Perfect. You don't want to hear yourself. You want to disappear into the sound. You burn the folk robe and put on electric armour. Not literally, though the imagery works. You abandon the acoustic purity, the protest singer image, the whole Ernest Coffeehouse aesthetic. You plug in and turn up and refuse to be what they want. If they want a spokesman, they'll have to find someone else. The disciples call it betrayal. You call it oxygen. They write angry articles. They send hate mail. Some of them cry, actually cry, like you've killed someone they loved. Maybe you have. You've killed the Bob Dylan they invented, the one who would stand still and be their symbol forever. The Bob Dylan is dead. You murdered him with a Fender Stratocaster. Your songs get sharper, stranger. Like a Rolling Stone is 6 minutes of electric rage disguised as a pop song. It shouldn't work. Radio stations don't play 6-minute songs, but it climbs the charts anyway. You're chasing noise now, not applause. Chasing the sound in your head that doesn't fit into folk music's tidy boxes. Highway 61 Revisited comes out. Then Blonde on Blonde. The songs are surreal, electric, impossible to pin down. Critics call it genius. They call it sellout. They call it both at once. You don't care. You're finally making the sound you hear in your dreams. People want the profit back. You give them riddles instead. Interviews become nonsense poems. Someone asks about your message and you talk about motorcycle accidents and grandmother clocks. They think you're being difficult. You're being honest. You don't have a message. You have sounds and images and words that fit together in ways you can't explain. You stop explaining because prophecy dies the moment it's understood. That's the trick. The moment you clarify, the moment you define yourself, the magic ends. Ambiguity is your weapon. Confusion is your shield. As long as no one knows what you can mean anything. Joan Baez is at some of these shows. You've got history. Messy, complicated, the kind that makes good songs later. She's a true believer. She thinks music can change the world. You think music can entertain people while the world changes itself. The difference is unbridgeable. She wants you to stand for something, to use your platform for good. You want to stand for nothing except the songs. You're not trying to be selfish, you're trying to survive. The moment you stand for something, you become a statue. Statues don't move. They just erode slowly until nothing's left. The tour gets bigger. The boos get louder. Every night is a battle. Folk purists show up specifically to hiss at you. You hired the band. They're incredible. They're professional. They don't care about folk music politics. They just play. The sound is massive, overwhelming, beautiful in its aggression. Someone yells, "Judas!" at a show in Manchester. You hear it clear as a bell. You pause, smile into the darkness and tell the band, play it fucking loud. The sound that follows is apocalyptic. You're not just playing music. You're declaring war on everyone's expectations. But here's the secret. You're not trying to hurt them. You're trying to save yourself. They wanted to bronze you, stick you in a museum, label you folk singer circa 1963. You're clawing your way out of the bronze while it's still wet. Electric guitars are just the tools you're using. Late at night, on the tour bus, you're exhausted in ways sleep doesn't fix. You've made enemies of people who used to worship you. You've confused fans who just wanted simple protest songs. But you can breathe again. The cage door is open. You're running towards something undefined, and that feels like freedom. The drugs don't help, but they don't hurt either. Speed to keep you awake, other things to help you sleep. The tour schedule is inhuman. You're playing constantly, writing constantly, recording constantly. You're running on fumes and pills and the sheer terror of stopping. You look at your hands on the guitar, electric guitar now, always electric, and you barely recognise them. These aren't the hands of a folk singer. They're the hands of someone who refused to be categorised. Someone who chose chaos over clarity, noise over neatness, questions over answers. The folk movement moves on without you. They find new spokesmen, new voices, new people willing to stand still and be symbols. You watch from a distance, relieved. Let someone else be the prophet. You're too busy being a question mark. You understand something crucial. They didn't want you to lead them somewhere. They wanted you to confirm what they already believed, to give them permission to feel righteous. But you've never been righteous. You've been confused, curious, restless. Those aren't the qualities of a leader. Those are the qualities of a searcher. So you keep searching, you plug in, you turn up, you refuse to be captured by their definitions. And if they call it betrayal, so be it. Betrayal implies you owed them something. You never signed that contract. You just wrote some songs. The rest is their imagination. The electric guitar hums in your hands, feedback screaming like beautiful violence. This is the sound of escape. This is what freedom sounds like. Loud, messy, imperfect, and entirely finally yours. The Triumph motorcycle gleams in the sun, then vanishes into rumour. July 29th, 1966. That's the official date. The official story involves a motorcycle accident near Woodstock. Your neck, your back, your vertebrae. Depending on who you ask, you almost died. Depending on who you ask, nothing happened at all. You crash, maybe. Or maybe you disappear and call it an accident. The truth is somewhere in the middle, buried under years of contradictions and deliberate vagueness. You've told different versions of this story. You'll tell more versions later. The crash is Schrödinger's accident, both real and fake until someone opens the box and you're never opening the box. No police report, no hospital records, no witnesses except the ones who maybe existed. The paper trail for this accident is thin enough to read through. Years later, people will search for documentation and find nothing. Some will call it a conspiracy. You'll call it privacy. Both are true. You hide in Woodstock, nursing wounds that may not be physical. The tour was killing you. That part's not a lie. Not the motorcycle, the tour. The constant travel, the booing crowds, the pills to wake up and pills to sleep. You were burning through your own nervous system like cheap fuel. Something had to break. The motorcycle is just cleaner than admitting you are falling apart. The world mourns your absence. Magazines speculate about your condition. Fans write letters hoping you'll recover. Record executives panic about their investment. Everyone has an opinion about your health except you. You're not talking. For the first time in years, you're completely silent. It feels like grace. You breathe for the first time in years. Real breathing, not the shallow panic breathing of constant performance. You wake up without a schedule. You eat breakfast without a journalist asking what it means. You exist without being Bob Dylan, or at least without having to perform Bob Dylan for an audience. You stop touring. You stop recording. You stop being public property. The machine grinds to a halt and you step off while it's still spinning. Let them figure it out without you. You're done. You start reading scripture. Not for religion exactly, though that comes later, but for language. For the weight of old words. The Bible sounds like something that matters. Your songs are starting to sound like nothing at all, just noise and speed and cleverness. You want weight back. You want words that settle in the chest like stones. You paint barns, actual barns. You and some friends just painting wood in the sun. Physical labour feels like meditation. You've been living in your head for years, words spinning constantly, and suddenly you're holding a brush. Paint doesn't lie. It just covers things. Simple, clean, honest work. You write in secret. Songs come slower now, but deeper. Without the pressure of product and deadline, you can follow ideas wherever they lead. Some songs take weeks. Some you abandon halfway through. No one's waiting. No one's judging. You're writing for yourself again, the way you did before anyone cared. People imagine you shattered. Really, you just got tired of being seen. Tired of every moment being documented, analysed, sold. The accident, real or invented, gives you permission to disappear. Society respects medical leave. They wouldn't respect, I just need to not be famous for a while. But broken vertebrae, that they understand. The newspapers print lies about your death. Small papers mostly. Bob Dylan dead at 25. Bob Dylan paralysed. Bob Dylan's career over. You read them with detached amusement. You don't correct them. Let the rumours grow. Rumours are fog, and fog is cover, and you need cover to figure out who you are when no one's watching. You understand something profound. If you fake your death once, you can live a dozen lives after. Not literal death, though the rumours flirt with it, but the death of a persona, the death of Bob Dylan folk singer, the death of Bob Dylan prophet, the death of whoever they needed you to be. Kill that guy off and you can become anyone. The band comes to Woodstock. You've been working with them, they're friends now, more than collaborators. You set up in a basement and just play. No agenda, no album in mind, just songs. Dozens of them, weird and wonderful and free. You're recording on a cheap reel-to-reel. The fidelity is terrible. The songs are perfect. These basement tape sessions feel like the first honest music you've made in years. No executives listening. No critics waiting to judge. No audience expecting greatness. Just a basement, some friends, and an endless supply of songs that don't need to be anything except what they are. You write, I Shall Be Released, in that basement. You write This Wheel's on Fire and Tears of Rage and dozens more. Some will leak out later. Some will stay buried for decades. You don't care. These songs aren't products. They're just songs. The way songs used to be before songs became career moves. Your kids are young. Sarah's there. Real life is happening in the spaces between songs. You're changing diapers and washing dishes and being a person instead of a symbol. It should feel mundane. It feels like revolution. The executives call. You don't answer. Your manager calls. You might answer, might not. Columbia wants another album. They can wait. They can wait forever for all you care. You've discovered something more valuable than fame, the ability to say no. Some nights you sit on the porch and smoke while the sun sets behind the mountains. No harmonica, no guitar, just sitting, being a person who exists without producing something. You'd forgotten that was allowed. You think about the motorcycle crash that maybe happened. The lie feels true now, truer than some actual truths. You really did crash. Not on a bike. In life. You were moving too fast and something had to give. The motorcycle is just the story you told because I was having an existential crisis. Doesn't make for good headlines. Time moves different here. Not tour time, where every day is a different city and it all blurs into one long smear of road. Real time, slow time. Time measured in seasons and your kids growing and the way light changes throughout the day. You'd forgotten time could move like this. You understand you can't hide forever. The world won't let you. But you can hide long enough to remember who you are underneath the myth. Long enough to separate Bob Dylan the person from Bob Dylan the product. Long enough to build a wall between them so thick nothing can break through. The Vanishing is the only honest performance you've given in years. Every other show was a lie. You pretending to be the thing they wanted. This is truth. Disappearing completely, refusing to perform, letting the myth starve while you feed yourself. You'll go back eventually. You know that. The music isn't finished with you, and you're not finished with the music. But right now, in this basement, on this porch, in this quiet house where no one's asking you to be anything, right now, you're exactly where you need to be. Vanished, healing, free. You marry Sarah and trade noise for silence. It's not a metaphor. You actually marry Sarah Lowndes in November 1965. Quiet ceremony, barely anyone there. You trade the screaming crowds and constant motion for a house where people speak in normal volumes. The math works out better than expected. You learn the language of mornings, cereal boxes, crying babies, unwashed dishes. This is a foreign language after years of hotels and tour buses. The domestic vernacular. You wake up to a kid crying instead of a phone ringing with another interview request. Some days this feels like failure. Most days it feels like winning. Fame bangs on the door, but you pretend you're not home. Journalists want interviews. You're busy. Executives want albums. You're busy. Fans want appearances. You're very busy. Busy with what? Fatherhood. Normalcy. The revolutionary act of being boring. The kids play in the yard while you strum half songs on the porch. Jesse's running around. Maria's getting bigger. These are your children. Actual human beings you helped create. More miraculous than any song you've written. Also more terrifying. Songs you can abandon halfway through. Children require follow-through. You watch them play and something in your chest unclenches. Something that's been tight since you left Minnesota. Maybe longer. You didn't know you were allowed to just exist. To sit on a porch and watch kids play without it meaning something. Without it being material for the next album. The world calls it your lost years. They weren't lost. They were stolen back. You stole them from the machine that wanted to eat you alive. You stole them from the mythmakers and the executives and the fans who thought they owned you. These years belong to you. Finally. Completely. You record the basement tapes with friends, whispering genius in a cellar. Not whispering literally. The band plays loud as ever. But whispering compared to the spectacle of touring. These recordings are secrets. Songs that exist just to exist, not to sell or to prove anything. Music made by people who love music more than they love being musicians. The tape recorder runs and you play whatever comes to mind. Traditional songs, nonsense songs, brilliant songs, terrible songs. No one's judging, no one's keeping score. This is what music was before it became career and product and myth. This is what you were trying to remember. Critics assume you're finished. You've read the articles, or Sarah tells you about them. Dylan's creative peak behind him. The voice of a generation goes silent. They're writing your obituary while you're still alive. Perfect. Let them. Obituaries mean they'll stop watching. You can disappear completely into normal life. You've never felt more alive. That's the secret they'd never understand. The touring, the fame, the constant production, that was death. Slow death, but death. This, staying home, raising kids, making music for fun, This is the most alive you've been since before you killed Robert Zimmerman. You watch your neighbours mow lawns and think, maybe this is peace. Actual peace. Not the metaphorical kind you write songs about. Peace as routine. Peace as no one caring what you do. You consider buying a lawnmower. You don't, but you consider it. That's how suburban you've become. Sarah understands something the fans never could. You're just a person. You're not a prophet or a voice or a symbol. You're a man who's good at writing songs and terrible at returning phone calls. She sees you clearly and still likes you. That might be the most radical thing that's ever happened to you. The kids don't care about Bob Dylan. They care about Dad. Dad who makes breakfast. Dad who's around. Dad who isn't some legend. Just a regular guy who happens to play guitar. This is weirdly liberating. You've spent years being Bob Dylan. Being Dad is easier. Less performance. More truth. But the world doesn't forgive quiet legends. They need you to be active, producing, relevant. A legend who retires is a legend who dies. They can't sell dead legends as well as living ones, so they circle. They wait. They send offers and requests and increasingly desperate please come back messages. You ignore most of them. But some get through. Columbia wants an album. Fine. You'll give them an album. You record John Wesley Harding in 3 quiet sessions. Sparse, acoustic, biblical. Nothing like what they expected. Perfect. The record company wanted product. You gave them a riddle wrapped in scripture. The album confuses everyone. Where's the electric Dylan? Where's the surrealism? This sounds like folk music? But not the protest folk they wanted you to abandon. Something older, weirder, calmer. You've made a country record without making a country record. Another escape. Another pivot away from definition. But even making albums from home means performing Bob Dylan, means engaging with the machine. You do it in small doses like medicine, just enough to keep them quiet, not enough to get dragged back into the full circus. You take drives through the countryside, just driving, no destination. This is what freedom looks like. Highway, trees, radio playing someone else's music. You're not thinking about songs, not thinking about the next move, just driving, being a person who drives. Some nights you sit with Sarah after the kids are asleep. You don't talk about the career, the legacy, what comes next. You talk about regular things, boring things. The conversation doesn't sparkle with wit or wisdom. It's just 2 people talking. You've missed this. You didn't know how much until you had it back. They drag you back on stage eventually. That's inevitable. But not yet. Not fully. You've bought yourself years of relative peace. Years where you're a person first and a legend second. Years where you can figure out how to be both without dying in the process. You stand in the doorway watching your kids sleep. This is success. Not the gold records or the magazine covers. This. These small humans breathing slowly in the dark. You made this. Not metaphorically, not artistically, actually made this. It matters more than anything you've sung. The world doesn't understand why you vanished. They think you're broken or scared or finished. They can't imagine you just wanted to be left alone. That fame isn't everyone's dream. That some people achieve it and realise, this isn't it. This isn't the thing. The thing is smaller, quieter, more domestic. You'll go back eventually. You'll tour again, record again, be Bob Dylan again. But with a difference. You'll have touched the other thing, the normal thing. You'll know it exists, and that knowledge will make all the future performances possible, because you'll know there's somewhere to return to when the mask gets too heavy. For now, you're just Dad, just husband, just a guy in Woodstock who used to be famous. The neighbourhood kids don't know who you are. That's perfect. That's exactly what you needed. You strum the guitar on the porch, half a song, maybe a good one, maybe not, doesn't matter. No one's listening except the trees and your family and the quiet evening air. No one's judging, no one's expecting genius. Just music, just life, just peace, stolen back from the machine that wanted to devour it. You lose your voice on purpose, not all at once. That would be too obvious. But gradually, album by album, you twist it into something unrecognisable. It becomes a strategy, a defence mechanism, a way of staying ahead of expectations. Each album, you twist it. Nasal, raspy, country croon, gospel moan. Nashville Skyline sounds like someone else entirely. Your voice is smooth, almost pretty. Critics don't know what to do with it. The cigarette rasp is gone. You sound like you're auditioning for the Grand Ole Opry. Some fans hate it. Perfect. It's not reinvention, it's camouflage. Every time they figure out what Bob Dylan sounds like, you sound like something else. You're the vocal equivalent of a fugitive changing license plates. Same car, different identity every state line. You refuse to sound like the man they fell in love with. That man, the one from 1963, voiced like gravel and prophecy. He's dead. You killed him. You keep killing him every time someone tries to resurrect him. They want that voice back. Too bad. That voice is evidence. You've already burned it. Critics call it decline. You call it molting. Snakes shed skin to grow. You shed voices for the same reason. The old one doesn't fit anymore. Too many people recognize it. Too many expectations attached. Time for a new one. Self-Portrait comes out in 1970. It's a mess. Deliberately so. Double album, cover songs, live tracks, string sections. You crooning like you're doing Vegas. Critics destroy it. Greil Marcus's review starts, "What is this shit?" You read that and smile. Mission accomplished. You've made something so confusing that even your defenders can't defend it. You destroy your own legend before anyone else can. That's the trick. If you tear down the myth yourself, no one else gets to do it. You stay in control. The demolition is performance art. They think you're lost. Really, you're just clearing ground for the next thing. In the mirror, your reflection doesn't match the sound anymore. Good. You look like Bob Dylan. You sound like 5 different people across 5 different albums. The disconnect is intentional. Keep them guessing. Keep them off balance. The moment they understand you, you're finished. Every rasp feels like scraping off the past, like sandpaper on old paint, revealing something underneath, or maybe covering something up. You're not sure which anymore. Maybe both. Maybe the scraping is the point, not what you find beneath. Planet waves, blood on the tracks, desire. Each one sounds different. Each one uses your voice in new ways. Sometimes raw, sometimes polished, sometimes filtered through effects and production, until you barely recognize yourself. That's the goal. Stay unrecognizable. Stay free. You're not chasing melody. You're chasing truth through static. Beauty was never the point. Anyone can be beautiful. Beauty is cheap, common, easy. Truth is harder. Truth requires ugliness sometimes. Your voice embraces ugliness like a long-lost friend. People ask why you don't sing pretty anymore. You want to laugh. You never sang pretty. You sang true, or true-ish. Close enough to truth that it felt like something. Pretty is for people who want to be liked. You want to be believed. Different goal entirely. The voice on Slow Train Coming sounds nothing like the voice on Blood on the Tracks. That's only 5 years. Normal people don't change voices in 5 years. But you're not normal people. You're someone running from definition. Voices are just costumes. You change them like most people change shirts. Some nights on stage you deliberately sing off key. Not because you can't hit the notes, though that's part of it, but because perfect pitch is boring. Perfection is death. The wobble in your voice. That moment where you almost lose the note but don't quite. That's where life lives. You sing Blowin' in the Wind in a different voice every time. Sometimes country, sometimes blues, sometimes like you're making fun of it. The purists hate this. They want the original version, the perfect folk version from 1963. You'll die before you give them that. That version is a cage. You refuse the cage. Your vocal cords are probably shredded by now. Decades of cigarettes, decades of pushing through illness, decades of refusing to coddle them. Good. Damaged instruments make interesting sounds. A perfect violin sounds like every other perfect violin. A broken one sounds like itself. You record infidels. Your voice is rougher than ever, weathered like desert wood. They say you sound old. You're 42. Old enough to stop caring what they think. Old enough to realize your voice is a tool, not a treasure. Tools get used. They wear down. They break. You use them anyway. In interviews, you speak in one voice but sing in another. The speaking voice is quiet, measured, reluctant. The singing voice is something else entirely. Louder, stranger, more willing to risk embarrassment. You keep them separate. Don't want people figuring out the connection. The Christian albums confuse everyone, not just the content, the voice. You sing gospel like you mean it, like you're testifying in a small church somewhere, not performing for thousands. The conviction in your voice is real even when everything else about you is performance. This confuses people. Good. You use your voice as a weapon against nostalgia. Every time someone wants the old Dylan back, you give them something newer and stranger. You refuse to be a jukebox playing hits from your youth. You're a living artist, which means changing, which means your voice changes too. Beauty was never the point. Survival was, and survival requires adaptation. The pretty voice singer from 1969 doesn't survive the 70s. The gospel shouter from 1979 doesn't survive the 80s. You survive by refusing to be any one thing long enough for them to kill it. You think about Woody Guthrie sometimes. His voice was imperfect too. Nasal, plain, human. It worked because it sounded true. You've taken that lesson and amplified it. Truth doesn't have to be pretty. Truth just has to be true. Your voice cracks on a high note. The audience holds its breath. You don't fix it. Don't apologize. Don't try again. You let the crack hang there in the air like evidence. Evidence of what? Humanity, maybe. Or just wear and tear. Either way, it's honest. You've made a career out of refusing to give them what they want. What they want is the past. What you give them is the present, messy and imperfect and constantly changing. Your voice is the vehicle for that refusal. Years from now, when they compile the anthology, your voice will sound like 5 different people across 5 different decades. They'll debate whether it's decline or evolution. You won't care. You'll be long past caring what words they use. The voice is just another mask. You've learned that. You thought your face was the mask and your voice was real. Wrong. Everything's a mask. Everything's performance. The voice included. So you change it, twist it, use it however you need to stay free. You end the set. Your voice is shot, raw, barely there. Tomorrow it'll be worse. You'll sing anyway. You always do. The voice is a tool, and tools are meant to be used until they break. And if they break, you'll find a new one. You always do. One night, you feel something. A tremor, a warning, a voice. You're in a hotel room somewhere on tour. 1978. Maybe 1979. The years blur. You're exhausted, empty, playing shows that feel like going through motions. And then something shifts. Like a door opening in a room you thought was sealed. Suddenly you're writing songs about God and people run from the theatre. Not metaphorically, literally running. You play Gotta Serve Somebody and watch the crowd thin like water draining. Some people walk out during the first verse. By the third song, half the venue is empty. You keep playing. You've gone mad, they say. Maybe you have. Madness and faith look similar from the outside. Both involve believing in things you can't prove. Both involve rejecting the reasonable world for something stranger. Maybe you have gone mad, but it feels like waking up. The stage becomes a pulpit. The band, a choir. You hire gospel singers, real ones, who grew up in churches, who know how to make music that reaches towards something. They stand behind you in white robes and sing about redemption, while the audience stares in confused horror. You sing about redemption with the rage of a man who's seen none. Every song is a plea, a prayer, a desperate grab at something beyond yourself. Your voice is raw with it. You're not performing spirituality, you're bleeding it. People can tell the difference. They're disturbed by the difference. Faith becomes your new disguise and you wear it until it itches. At first, it fits perfectly. Born-again Dylan, gospel Dylan, saved Dylan. You throw yourself into it completely. Bible studies, church services, evangelical fervour. You've never done anything halfway. Why start now? But slowly, inevitably, the disguise starts to chafe. The certainty required by evangelical Christianity presses against your natural instinct for ambiguity. They want clear answers. You've built a career on refusing clarity. The tension grows. You believe, then you doubt, then you leave. Not dramatically, not publicly. You just drift away like you've drifted away from everything else in your life. The gospel albums are sincere in the moment. But moments pass. Faith remains, but the evangelical certainty fades. You're back to questions. Questions feel more honest anyway. Fans call it betrayal again, or as if they own your soul. The folk fans called it betrayal when you went electric. The electric fans called it betrayal when you went country. Now the country fans call it betrayal when you find God. And the God fans will call it betrayal when you lose him. Or don't lose him exactly. Just stop talking about him constantly. You smile. Even God doesn't get to keep you forever. Not because you're rejecting God. The question's more complicated than that. But because you're rejecting permanence. Rejecting the idea that you are one thing and will always be that thing. God can be part of the picture. God can't be the whole picture. Your Jewish family doesn't know what to make of all this. Your mother reads articles about you finding Jesus and probably sighs. You don't explain. You've never explained. Why start now? Let them wonder. Let everyone wonder. Wondering is healthier than certainty. The Christian albums are beautiful, though. You can admit that even after the fervour passes. Slow Train Coming has some of the best songs you've written in years. Gotta Serve Somebody is a genuine hit. The irony isn't lost on you. The most explicitly religious music you've ever made is also some of the most commercially successful. Saved is rawer, more intense. Critics hate it. Fans are confused. You don't care. You're singing from somewhere deeper than commercial calculation, somewhere primal and desperate. The music sounds like it sounds because that's what faith sounds like when it's real, messy, loud, slightly unhinged. Shot of Love starts to show cracks. The faith is still there, but it's complicated now. The certainty is wearing thin. You're asking questions again instead of providing answers. The born-again community starts to wonder if you're backsliding. You don't confirm or deny. You just keep writing songs. When the light fades, you walk back into shadow, humming. Not dramatically, not with announcements. You just stop doing gospel shows, stop preaching between songs, start mixing in old material again. The Christian songs remain in the set, but they're not the whole set anymore. They're part of the tapestry. Some fans breathe a sigh of relief, others feel betrayed. You've learned this pattern by now. Every change creates two groups, the relieved and the betrayed. You can't please both. You stopped trying to please either. The experience changes you, though. Even after the evangelical phase passes, something remains. Not dogma. You've never been good with dogma. But awareness. An awareness that you're not the centre of the universe. That something exists beyond yourself. The language for that something shifts, but the awareness stays. You still read scripture. Not daily, not religiously, but regularly. The poetry in those old books still hits. The weight of ancient words. You're less interested in doctrine now, more interested in mystery. The Bible as literature, as wisdom, as question rather than answer. People ask if you're still Christian. You give vague answers. I don't think about it in those terms. It's complicated. I believe in God if that's what you're asking. You refuse the label even as you don't fully reject it. Labels are cages. You've learned this lesson 100 times. The gospel singers move on to other gigs. You go back to your regular band. But sometimes, late at night, alone with the guitar, you play those songs again. Pressing on. Saved. In the garden. They still work. They still mean something, even if what they mean has shifted. You realise faith was never the problem. Certainty was the problem. The evangelical movement wanted you to be certain, to testify without doubt, to stand firm. But you're not built for standing firm. You're built for movement, for questioning, for the journey rather than the destination. God, if God exists, and you think something does, probably understands this about you better than any church ever could. Probably appreciates the honesty of doubt more than the performance of certainty. Or at least that's what you tell yourself on nights when you wonder if you got any of it right. The songs remain. That's what matters. The songs from that period are part of your catalogue now, part of the legacy. Future listeners won't care about the theology. They'll just hear a voice reaching for something beyond itself. That's all any of your songs have ever been. You keep walking, away from the pulpit, back into the shadows, humming something that might be a hymn or might just be a song. The distinction doesn't matter as much as you once thought. Music is prayer. Prayer is music. Everything else is commentary. You pick up a brush because words feel like lies. It's the late 80s, early 90s. You've been writing and singing for 3 decades, and suddenly every word feels calculated, performed, false. Even the true words feel false. Especially the true words, so you reach for paint instead. You paint diners, highways, freight trains, all the places you pretended to come from. The American landscape of your mythology. Except this time, you're not pretending, you're documenting. The brush doesn't lie the way words do. Colour is honest. A blue is just blue. It doesn't mean anything except itself. The diners look lonely in your paintings, chrome and neon against dark skies. They're not cheerful roadside stops. They're islands of light in enormous darkness. You paint them obsessively. Same diner, different angles, trying to get at something underneath the surface. Freight trains appear again and again on your canvases. The trains you claimed to ride as a teenager. The trains that were part of the Woody Guthrie fantasy. Here they are, finally real. Metal on canvas. Rust and power. You're painting your lies into truth. Metal gates rise from your welding torch. Doors that open to no one. You've started welding sculpture too. Ironwork. Heavy, physical, permanent, or permanent-ish, even metal rusts. But it feels more solid than songs, which evaporate the moment you stop singing them. The smell of iron and oil replaces applause. Your studio smells like a garage, like manual labour, like honest work. Not like a recording studio with its careful acoustics and expensive equipment. This is messier, more real. You come home with paint under your fingernails, evidence of creation that soap can't completely wash away. Critics wonder if you're serious. They've seen musicians dabble in visual art before, usually badly. Is this a midlife crisis, a retirement hobby, a publicity stunt? You don't answer. You just paint. Let them wonder. Wondering is fine. Wondering keeps them from getting too close. You paint through the night sometimes. No one waiting. No deadline. Just you and canvas and the thing you're trying to capture. It's meditative in a way music hasn't been since the basement tapes. No lyrics to worry about. No melody to find. Just colour and form and the way light hits metal. Every painting is a map to the places fame erased. Your mythology came from somewhere. Drifter stories, American landscapes, blues imagery. But fame turned that mythology into product, into something packaged and sold. Here, in paint, you're reclaiming it, making it yours again. The highway paintings are endless. Long roads disappearing into vanishing points. Empty roads mostly. Sometimes a car, but rarely. Just asphalt and horizon, and the promise of somewhere else. You've spent your life on roads. Now you're painting them, trying to understand what they mean. You sell them for millions, but you trade it all for anonymity. The paintings become collectible instantly. Not because they're masterpieces, though some are genuinely good, but because they're Bob Dylan paintings. The name makes them valuable. The name ruins everything it touches. Anonymous painters can paint badly and learn from mistakes. Bob Dylan paints badly and critics write think pieces. What is Dylan saying with his primitive style? He's not saying anything. He's just learning to paint. But you can't just learn when you're famous. Everything means something. Everything is significant. The brush moves steadier than the voice ever did. That's a surprise. You thought your hands would shake after years of guitar, but the brush feels natural. The motion is different but similar. Both are about control and release, about knowing when to push and when to let go. For once, you don't need metaphors. The colour says enough. A painting of a train is just a train. It doesn't symbolise anything. Critics will find symbolism. They always do. But that's their problem. You're painting objects, not meanings. Gates and doors appear everywhere in your work. Usually closed, usually locked. Heavy iron gates that refuse entry. You weld them in your studio, then paint them on canvas. The repetition feels important. You're working something out. Maybe about access. Maybe about barriers. Maybe about nothing. You realise art is the only place left to hide in plain sight. Music made you famous. Acting in movies kept you in the public eye. But painting? Most people don't visit galleries. Most people don't follow the visual art world. You can make art without performing, without being Bob Dylan on stage. The gallery shows are quieter than concerts. No screaming fans. Just people walking slowly past your work, reading the little placards, whispering to each other. Some know you're Bob Dylan, some just know you're a painter. The second group is refreshing. You stand in the back during openings, watching people react to your work. It's different than concerts. No applause, no cheers, just observation. Some people love it. Some people clearly hate it, but are too polite to say so. Some people are confused. All of these reactions feel honest in a way concert reactions never do. Critics compare you to other musician painters. Not as good as John Lennon's drawings. Better than Joni Mitchell's landscapes. You don't read these reviews carefully. The comparisons are inevitable but meaningless. You're not competing with other musician painters. You're just painting. The work is self-taught, raw, unpolished. You like it that way. Formal training would ruin it, would make it correct instead of honest. Your paintings look like someone learning to see. That's accurate. You are learning to see. After decades of being seen, you're finally learning to look. Some pieces are clearly influenced by American folk art. Primitive style, bold colours, flat perspectives. You're channeling the same sources you channeled for music. Woody Guthrie's America, Depression-era photography, Dust Bowl aesthetics, but in paint instead of song. You work in series, 10 paintings of gates, 20 paintings of trains, 15 paintings of diners. The repetition is part of the process. You're not trying to paint the perfect gate. You're trying to understand what a gate is by painting it over and over until it reveals itself. Late nights in the studio feel like meditation. No phone ringing, no obligations, just metal and paint and the sound of your own breathing. This might be the freest you've felt since Woodstock, since those years of hiding with Sarah and the kids. The work will never be as famous as the music. You know that. Accept it. Maybe prefer it. The paintings are successful enough to justify continuing, quiet enough to avoid becoming spectacle. It's the perfect balance. You sign them, Bob Dylan in the corner, the signature that's worth more than the painting itself probably, but you sign them anyway. They're yours. You made them. Let the name do what names do. The smell of paint thinner and turpentine becomes familiar as cigarette smoke. Your studio is a refuge, a place where Bob Dylan doesn't have to perform Bob Dylan, where you can just be a person making things with their hands. You'll keep painting for decades. Between albums, between tours, between everything else, the brush is always there, patient, waiting, honest in a way the microphone never is. They accuse you of stealing lines from poets and soldiers. It starts small. Someone notices a line in Love and Theft that sounds like something from a Japanese novelist. Then the accusations multiply. You've lifted from Ovid, from Civil War poetry, from Confederate memoirs, from Timrod. The internet detectives are thorough. They compile lists. You laugh. You've been stealing since Elston Gunn. Since before that, really. Since the first time you heard a Woody Guthrie record and decided to sing like him. Theft is how you learned music. Theft is how everyone learns music. You're just more honest about it than most people. Folk music was born from borrowed bones. You just never lied about it. Or maybe you did lie about it, but the lie was always obvious enough that it didn't matter. Every folk song is stolen from another folk song. Every blues is stolen from another blues. That's the tradition, that's the art form. You quote Melville, Ovid, the Bible, mix them into your own confession. Cross the Green Mountain pulls from Civil War poetry. So what? The Civil War poets pulled from each other. Shakespeare stole plots from Italian sources. Modernist poets practiced creative borrowing. You're doing what artists have always done. You're just doing it obviously enough that people notice. The critics call it theft. You call it inheritance. There's a difference. Theft implies you're taking something that doesn't belong to you. Inheritance means you're claiming what's already yours. American music belongs to everyone who makes American music. Those old poems, those dead poets, they left their words lying around. You pick them up, finders keepers. Everything that's ever been sung belongs to everyone. You believe this deeply. Music isn't property. Poetry isn't property. Culture is a commons, not a corporation. The idea that you can own words, own melodies, own culture, that's the modern world's delusion. You reject it. You lift lines, twist them, make them breathe again. A line from Ovid dies with Latin students and academics. But put it in a blues song, change the context, shift the meaning, and suddenly it's alive again. You're not killing these lines, you're resurrecting them. Henry Timrod is a perfect example. Confederate poet, mostly forgotten. You pull lines from his work and suddenly people are reading Timrod again. You've done him a favour, made him relevant to the 21st century. Theft. You're the best publicity his estate never paid for. Every accusation only proves the songs still matter. If no one cared about your work, no one would bother tracking down your sources. The internet forensics, the detective work. It's all evidence that people are listening closely. Could be worse. They could be ignoring you. You tell them, all I ever did was remember better than most people forget. That's accurate. You've got a warehouse of American culture in your head. Songs you heard once in 1958, poems you read in 1962, lines that stuck for 50 years. Your brain is a junk drawer of American art. You reach in and pull out what you need. They don't get it. Memory is your rebellion. Remembering old songs is resistance against the tyranny of the new. Remembering old poets is refusing to let the past die. You're fighting cultural amnesia with cultural appropriation. The irony is delicious. Besides, the lines sound different in your songs. That's what they miss. A line from Ovid in Latin translated to English, then buried in academic textbooks. That's one thing. The same line in a blues progression, sung in your rasp, backed by electric guitar. That's something else entirely. Context is everything. You've always been a thief. The early folk songs were Woody Guthrie's songs. The protest songs were borrowed structures filled with new words. Blowin' in the Wind is No More Auction Block with a facelift. A Hard Rain is Lord Randall in modern dress. Everyone knows this. Theft is the foundation. What's funny is people get mad about the poetry but not the music. You've stolen blues progressions from Robert Johnson, melodies from Irish ballads, chord changes from folk standards. No one complains about that. But lift a line from a poet? Suddenly it's plagiarism. The hypocrisy is beautiful. You sit in interviews and they ask about the accusations. You shrug. Wussy plagiarism, you call it once. Who cares? The songs work, the words fit, the meanings resonate. That's all that matters. The rest is lawyers and academics fighting over nothing. Joni Mitchell criticises you for it. You respect Joni. But she doesn't understand. She writes from scratch, pure creation. Good for her. You write from the rubble of American culture. You're an archaeologist as much as a songwriter. You dig up what's buried and put it back in circulation. The Nobel Prize Committee doesn't seem to care. They give you the Literature Prize anyway. Maybe they understand something the critics don't. Maybe they recognise that all literature is conversation with previous literature. That originality is a myth. That influence and borrowing and theft are how culture moves forward. You think about T.S. Eliot saying, good poets borrow, great poets steal. You've stolen from Eliot too, probably. You steal from everyone. Equal opportunity thief. You'd steal from yourself if you could figure out how. Modern Times lifts from Henry Timrod throughout. Once people figured that out, they went hunting. Found dozens of lifted lines. You don't apologise. Why would you? Timrod's been dead for 150 years. He's not filing lawsuits from the grave. The folk tradition is oral. Songs get passed down, changed, adapted. No one owns them. You bring that ethic to literature. Poems get passed down, changed, adapted. Why should they be locked away in books, owned by estates, protected by copyright? Culture should flow like water. You've made a career out of transformation, taking the old and making it new. That's alchemy, not theft. Lead into gold, dead poetry into living songs. The accusations miss the point entirely. You're not stealing, you're recycling, you're composting culture. Some nights you sit with your notebooks, reading through lines you've collected, phrases from books, snatches of poems, things you heard people say. Your notebooks are collages, your songs are mixtapes. You've never pretended to be purely original. Original is boring. Remixed is interesting. The accusations will keep coming. You know this. Every album, some detective will find your sources, post them online, call you a plagiarist. You don't mind. Keeps people engaged. Keeps them digging through American poetry looking for your influences. You're creating readers, creating scholars, all through theft. You quote Robert Burns in interviews. The rank is but the guinea's stamp. The man's the goad for a that. Money is just money. The person is what matters. Same with words. The source is just the source. The song is what matters. What you do with the words, that's the art. Late at night you read Timrod's actual poems. They're beautiful in a 19th century kind of way. Formal, romantic, full of longing, but dead. No one reads them until you steal from them. Then suddenly high school kids are Googling Timrod, reading Confederate poetry, learning American history. You've done more for Timrod's legacy than any English professor ever did. The accusations are compliments disguised as criticism. They're saying, your songs are so dense, so rich, so full of meaning that we have to trace their sources. We have to figure out where all this came from. That's respect. That's deep engagement. You'll take it. You keep stealing. From Melville, from Rimbaud, from the Bible, from everywhere. Your songs are mosaics made from broken pieces of American culture. Every piece belongs to someone else originally. But the mosaic, that's yours. That's all you. That's the art. You paint your face white and go back on the road. It's 1975. The Rolling Thunder Review. The name sounds like a storm, feels like a circus. You've recruited an army of musicians, poets, hangers-on and ghosts. Everyone's coming. Everyone's invited. The caravan rolls through small towns in New England like a fever dream on wheels. The caravan swirls with ghosts. Joan, Allen, Ginsberg, Baez, all orbiting your madness. Joan Baez is back, and the history between you is thick enough to cut. Ginsberg's writing poetry about the tour in real time. Johnny Mitchell shows up for a bit. Roger McGuinn, Ramblin' Jack Elliott, T-Bone Burnett. The bus is full of people who either love you or used to love you or think they understand you. None of them do. The crowd doesn't know who's performing anymore. Maybe no one is. The shows feel like chaos. Deliberate, calculated chaos. You switch the set list every night. Sometimes you wear a mask. Sometimes you wear that white face paint. Sometimes you come out as someone else entirely. The audience came for Bob Dylan and gets a dozen different versions of Bob Dylan simultaneously. Every show feels like a séance with your former selves. You're channeling 1965 Dylan one moment, 1963 folk Dylan the next. You're playing Isis and Hurricane and A Hard Rain in the same set. All your incarnations crashing into each other on stage. The collision is the point. Cameras roll. You're filming everything. Sam Shepard is along writing scenes that may or may not end up in anything. You're making a movie called Ronaldo and Clara. Even you can't tell what's real. Is that scene with Joan scripted? Is that fight improvised? Is any of this real, or is it all performance art disguised as a tour? The white makeup feels like armour, but it's cracking. You apply it before each show. Thick white paint like mime makeup or death mask. It's supposed to hide you. Instead, it makes you more visible. Every crack in the makeup shows. Every bead of sweat leaves tracks. The armour reveals more than it conceals. The music howls. Folk, blues, circus, gospel, these all bleeding together. The set lists make no sense. Simple twist of fate into Isis, into Mr. Tambourine Man. The band has to stay alert. You're calling audibles, changing keys, stopping songs mid-verse to start different songs. Musical chaos as artistic statement. The violin player Scarlett Rivera becomes crucial. You met her by accident on the street in the village. She adds this wild, gypsy energy to the sound. Her violin screams through Hurricane like righteous anger. You didn't know you needed a violin until you heard hers. Fans call it chaotic. You call it resurrection. You're bringing something back to life. Not Bob Dylan the legend, but music as living event. Music as happening. The folk tradition was about spontaneity before it became about purism. You're recapturing the spontaneous part. You burn every version of yourself on stage, night after night. Folk Dylan burns, electric Dylan burns, country Dylan burns. You stand in the ashes and immediately become something else. The tour is a Viking funeral for all your previous identities. The flames feel cleansing. The Hurricane performances are intense. You're championing Reuben Carter, the boxer imprisoned for murders he says he didn't commit. The song is 8 minutes of righteous fury. You sing it like you're testifying in court. Some nights you break down during it. The emotion is real even when everything else is performance. Joan sings with you on Diamonds and Rust. She wrote it about you, about your relationship, about the complexity and pain. Singing it together feels like bleeding in public. The audience can sense something real happening underneath the theatrical makeup, something raw and unresolved. When the tour ends, you feel both empty and clean, like confession after sin. You've purged something. exorcise demons, burn through so many identities so fast that maybe finally there's nothing left to burn. You're ash. You can rebuild from ash. But Ronaldo and Clara is a disaster. 4 hours long, experimental, confusing. No one understands it. Critics destroy it. You edited it yourself, cutting together footage with no clear narrative, dream logic instead of story logic. People walk out of screenings. The film disappears quickly, becomes legendary for being unwatchable. You watch it years later and wonder what you were thinking, but you also see something genuine in it. A document of confusion, of searching, of someone trying to figure out who they are by playing every possible version of themselves. It fails as cinema. But as self-exploration, maybe it succeeded. The tour merchandise is a hat, a wide-brimmed hat that you wear in photos. Everyone in the troupe gets one. You're building a mythology of outsiders, wanderers, gypsies. The hat becomes a symbol, another prop in the endless costume drama of being Bob Dylan. You travel town to town in buses. The tour is deliberately low-key. Small venues, surprise appearances, tickets sold last minute. You're avoiding arenas, avoiding spectacle. This is intimate chaos. Chaos you can touch. Some nights you don't know why you're doing this. The logistics are insane. Managing all these personalities, these egos, these artists. You're not a manager. You're barely functional as a human being. But you're compelled to keep moving, keep gathering people, keep creating this rolling community of displaced artists. The white face paint becomes iconic. Photos from the tour show you looking like a ghost, like a mime, like death. The image haunts you for years. People see those photos and think, that's Dylan going crazy. Maybe they're right. Or maybe you're saner in that moment than you've ever been. Sanity is overrated anyway. The second leg of the tour happens in 1976. It's different. Bigger venues, more polished. Some of the wild energy is gone. You try to recapture it but can't. The spontaneity has calcified into routine. You realise you can't manufacture chaos. You can only let it happen once. Looking back, the Rolling Thunder review feels like a fever you survived. Intense while it lasted. Unclear in purpose, cathartic in effect. You burned through something you needed to burn through. Came out different on the other side. The white face paint washes off. The troupe disperses. Everyone returns to their individual lives and careers. But for a few months in 1975, you created a travelling carnival of American music. A circus of your former selves. A séance that actually worked. Decades later, strangers box up your life. 60,000 artefacts in cold storage. Everything you've ever written, recorded, doodled or thrown away. Letters, notebooks, lyrics. Set lists, clothing, instruments, everything. The Bob Dylan archive. It's moving to Tulsa of all places. Not New York, not Nashville. Tulsa, Oklahoma. You picture them cataloguing your cigarette burns as if they're scripture. Some grad student in white gloves examining a notebook page with coffee stains and crossouts, trying to determine what you meant by that third revision in the margin, treating your scribbles like Dead Sea Scrolls. They think the notes will explain you. That's cute. They think if they read enough drafts, examine enough revisions, study enough lyrics, they'll finally understand Bob Dylan. You want to tell them, I don't understand Bob Dylan. What chance do they have? You grin. Even your handwriting lies. Sometimes you write things just to write them. Sometimes you steal from books and don't remember which books. Sometimes you contradict yourself deliberately. Your notebooks are minefields. Good luck, scholars. You've left them nothing but questions disguised as answers. The drafts contradict each other. That's the point. Blowin' in the Wind exists in 6 different versions in your papers. Different words, different meanings, different directions the song could have gone. They're all real. They're all fake. The published version is the only one that matters, and even that one changes every time you sing it. Every lyric rewritten 10 times, every version truer than the last, or less true. Truth is a moving target. You chase it across multiple drafts until you're not sure what you were chasing anymore. The final version isn't the best version, it's just the one you stopped at. The scholars dig for meaning. All they'll find is a man terrified of finality. You've never wanted to be done. Done means dead. Done means locked in place. Done means they can finally define you. So you keep revising, keep changing, keep contradicting yourself. Even posthumously, you'll contradict yourself through the archives. Tulsa becomes your mausoleum of myths. The University of Tulsa paid millions for this stuff. They've built a special facility, climate-controlled, secure. Professional archivists sorting through your garbage. Literal garbage sometimes. You didn't throw everything away. Now it's all preserved. Your trash is treasure. The American dream in action. They say it's an archive. You know it's a tomb. A tomb for Bob Dylan. Or at least for the evidence of Bob Dylan. All the proof that you existed, that you created, that you changed music. It's all in Tulsa now, waiting for scholars to dissect it like medical students with a cadaver. You built it yourself, one discarded truth at a time. Every notebook you kept, every draft you didn't burn, every set list you scribbled and tossed aside. You knew this was coming. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere you knew people would want to study this. So you kept it, kept everything. The tomb is self-constructed. They'll find inconsistencies. That's guaranteed. Letters where you claim one thing, songs where you claim another, interviews where you contradict both. Good. Let them wrestle with it. Let them write dissertations about the contradictions. Keep them busy for decades. Some of your heroes destroyed their papers, burned them before anyone could examine them. You respect that. But you went the other direction. You kept everything and made it available. Transparent opacity. They can see everything. They'll understand nothing. The money from the sale goes somewhere. You don't need it. You've got plenty. But the archive needed a home, and Tulsa offered one. Plus the tax write-off probably makes sense. Your accountant explained it. You nodded along. The details don't matter. What matters is the stuff is preserved and you don't have to think about it anymore. You imagine tourists visiting in 50 years, walking through exhibits of your handwritten lyrics, listening to outtakes through headphones, staring at your clothes like religious relics. It's grotesque and fitting simultaneously. You've been treated like a religious figure for decades. Might as well have a shrine. The archive includes recordings from the basement tape sessions. The real ones, not the official release. Hours and hours of you and the band just playing. These weren't meant for public consumption. You were just messing around. Now scholars will analyse every note, every mistake, every moment of laughter caught on tape. Your old guitars are there, instruments you played on classic albums. Each guitar is catalogued, described, contextualised. The Martin you played at Newport before you went electric. The Stratocaster from the electric tours. They're artefacts now. They've transcended being instruments. They're symbols preserved in glass cases. Your drawings are there too. Sketches from notebooks. Doodles from recording sessions. You're not sure some of these should be public. They're rough, unfinished, sometimes just scribbles. But the archivists included them. Everything is data. Everything might mean something to someone. Letters from Joan, letters from Sarah, personal correspondence that you never thought anyone would read. Did you save them thinking they'd end up in archives? Or did you just save them? Memory is unreliable, your motives even more so. The film footage is there. Outtakes from Ronaldo and Clara. Footage from the Rolling Thunder tour. Interviews you did and didn't like. It's all preserved. Every frame you were too vain to release or too busy to think about. Now it's historical record. Set lists from every tour. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. Each one showing how you changed the show night by night. Scholars can track your set list evolution. See when you started playing like a Rolling Stone differently. Track when you dropped Blowin' in the Wind entirely. Your decisions frozen in time. You wonder if the archive makes you more or less mysterious. Does seeing everything demystify you? Or does the sheer volume of contradictory material deepen the mystery? You're betting on the second option. You've lived your life in a way that resists clarity. The archive will reflect that. Some of the stuff embarrasses you. Early lyrics that are terrible. Songs you forgot you wrote. Ideas that went nowhere. But that's honest. That's real. Not every idea is good. Not every song works. The archive shows the full process. Genius and garbage mixed together. They'll be going through this stuff for generations. PhDs will be written. Books will be published. Documentaries will be made. All trying to answer the question, who was Bob Dylan? The archive won't answer that question. It'll just provide more evidence for people to argue over. You picture some future scholar finding a notebook page with contradictory lyrics. They'll write an essay about it. Dylan's dueling meanings, a study in contradiction. They'll map the contradictions. They'll search for patterns. They'll never find what they're looking for because there's nothing to find. It's just you, changing your mind. The archive is your final trick, your last disappearing act. You've given them everything, every note, every draft, every scrap, and in doing so, you've given them nothing. Because more information doesn't mean more understanding. Sometimes it just means more confusion. You're gone, but not gone. Present, but absent. The archive is a monument to a person who spent his whole life refusing to be monument. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so perfect. You hit the road again, and never stop. It's 1988 when the never-ending tour officially starts. Someone asks when the tour ends. You don't answer. You don't know. Maybe never. That's the point. The road becomes home. Stopping becomes death. You live from motel to motel, a ghost with a guitar, Holiday Inns, Best Westerns, whatever's near the venue. You don't remember the towns anymore. They blur together. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, somewhere in Texas, somewhere. The specific location doesn't matter. You're always in the same place, on tour. Crowds come expecting the past. You give them something unrecognizable. They want Blowin' in the Wind sung like 1963. You give them Blowin' in the Wind sung like a blues dirge or a country lament, or you skip it entirely. They want the Bob Dylan they remember. You give them the Bob Dylan who's standing in front of them tonight, and he's not the same as last night's Bob Dylan. Sometimes you forget lyrics on purpose. Chaos is your punctuation. Middle of Tangled Up in Blue, you'll just stop, change lyrics, switch verses around. Sing verse 4 where verse 2 should be. Is it age? Is it deliberate? Even you're not sure anymore. The line between calculated chaos and actual confusion has blurred beautifully. Nights blur, applause turns to white noise. Clapping sounds the same in Boston and Seattle. You barely hear it anymore. It's just background sound, like wind or traffic. You acknowledge it with a nod and move to the next song. The set list is already changing in your head for tomorrow. You realise motion itself is your last religion. Not God, though God's still in the picture somewhere. Not Buddhism, though you've read about that. Motion, movement. The act of going. As long as you're moving, you're alive. Stop moving and you calcify. Become statue. Become legacy. You refuse legacy. The band changes. Members cycle through over the years. Good musicians, professional, adaptable. They have to be adaptable because you change everything constantly. New arrangements, new keys, new tempos. They show up to soundcheck never quite sure what version of the song they're playing tonight. The songs mutate. Highway 61 Revisited sounds different every time. Sometimes rockabilly, sometimes slow blues, sometimes with a reggae feel that makes no sense but works anyway. The mutation is deliberate. You refuse to preserve your own songs in amber. They're living things. They change or they die. The road stays eternal. 20 years into the never-ending tour, someone does the math. You've played over 2,000 shows. You'll play 2,000 more. The number doesn't mean anything. Numbers are just numbers. The road is the thing. The constant motion is the thing. Home becomes a rumour. You own a house. Multiple houses, probably. But you're never there. Home is the tour bus. Home is the dressing room. Home is whatever hotel bed you're sleeping in until tomorrow's drive. Your children are grown. Sarah's long gone. Home isn't a place anymore. It's a memory. You keep going because stopping would mean becoming real again. Real Bob Dylan. Definable Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan who exists in one place and can be pinned down. You've spent your entire life avoiding that. The tour is your escape route, endlessly extended. As long as you're touring, you're undefined. You're in motion. You're free. The venues vary. Sometimes it's amphitheatres. Sometimes it's small theatres. Sometimes it's casinos, which is perfect. You're in a casino in Connecticut, then a casino in California. The surreal environment matches your state of mind. Everything's a gamble. Every show's a roll of dice. You tell yourself, as long as I'm moving, I can't be caught. Caught by what? By definition. By age. By death. By the past. By expectations. By the graveyard of legends where they put musicians who stop evolving. Keep moving. Stay ahead of the obituary writers. Sometimes you're tired. More than tired. Exhausted to the bone. You're not young anymore. The travel wears on you. The performances drain you. But stopping is worse. Stopping is surrender. So you keep going. The show must go on isn't a cliché. It's a survival strategy. You play small towns that never get concerts. Places where you're the biggest thing to happen all year. Places where the venue holds 500 people and you could sell out Madison Square Garden. You like the small towns better. Less spectacle. More music. Fewer people expecting Bob Dylan the legend. More people just watching Bob Dylan play guitar. Your voice gets rougher. Every year, rougher. By the 2000s, it's nearly a growl. Critics call it ruined. You call it seasoned. It's the sound of decades on the road. The sound of 10,000 cigarettes. The sound of someone who's earned every rasp. The set list become puzzles. Devoted fans try to predict what you'll play. They can't. You've got 500 songs to choose from. Every night is different. Sometimes you play deep cuts from obscure albums. Sometimes you cover someone else's song. Sometimes you pull out a standard from the American songbook, keeping everyone guessing, yourself included. You rarely speak to the audience. No banter, no explaining. You walk on, you play, you walk off. Sometimes you say thank you. Sometimes you don't. The music speaks. Everything else is unnecessary. The never-ending tour becomes your identity. You're not Bob Dylan who tours. You're Bob Dylan who is always touring. The tour isn't something you do. It's something you are. You've merged with it. Become one with the road. Some shows are transcendent. Everything clicks. The band's locked in. Your voice finds something special. The songs reach some deeper frequency. These nights remind you why you do this. Why you keep going. The music still has power. Other shows are terrible. You're off. The band's off. Nothing works. You get through it professionally but without joy. These nights remind you that it's work. That performance is labour. That even magic requires effort. You don't read reviews anymore. Don't check social media to see what people thought. What they think doesn't matter. You're not performing for approval. You're performing because that's what you do. That's who you are now. The applause is nice but irrelevant. 25 years into the never-ending tour. 30 years. Shows in Japan, shows in Australia, shows in Europe, shows everywhere. The Earth becomes one big circuit you loop endlessly. The globe is your stage. Geography is just routing. You're 70, 75, 80, still touring. The band's younger now, everyone's younger. You're the old man on stage with the weathered guitar, but you're still moving, still refusing to stop. Still running from the thing you've always been running from, conclusion. The never-ending tour is the perfect description of your life. One long refusal to be finished, one endless escape from finality, one perpetual motion machine powered by refusal and songs and the terror of standing still. The call comes, you've won the Nobel Prize in Literature. You're somewhere on tour when your manager tells you. Maybe you're on the bus. Maybe you're in a hotel. The location doesn't matter. The news is absurd. You've won the Nobel Prize. You, Bob Dylan. The Nobel Prize in Literature. You stare at the phone, amused. The Nobel Prize, given to writers, real writers, novelists and poets. People who use pen and paper and write incomplete sentences, not people who scribble lyrics on napkins and call it art. This has to be a joke. Literature. You wrote jukebox prayers, not novels. You wrote songs for radios and record players. You wrote 3-minute stories about lovers and losers and highways. You didn't write War and Peace. You wrote like a Rolling Stone. There's a difference. But the call is real. The Nobel Committee, in its infinite wisdom, has decided song lyrics are literature. Your song lyrics specifically. They've given you the world's most prestigious literary prize for writing things people sing along to in cars. You skip the ceremony. Of course you skip the ceremony. Stockholm in December for a fancy dinner where everyone wears tuxedos and you have to give a speech. No, that's not happening. You've skipped more important things than the Nobel ceremony. You'll skip this too. You send a recorded lecture instead. The rules say you have to deliver a lecture within 6 months of winning, or you lose the prize money. Fine. You record something. You talk for 30 minutes about literature, about songs, about the connection between the two. You send it in. Obligation fulfilled. You quote Moby Dick, The Odyssey and All Quiet on the Western Front. 3 books that actually shaped you. You talk about reading them, about how they influenced your work. You make it clear you're a reader. You know literature. You've absorbed literature. Your songs are in conversation with literature. Maybe that makes them literature too. Maybe not. Who cares? Academics debate if lyrics count as literature. You keep touring. While they're arguing about whether your Nobel is legitimate, You're in some theatre in Iowa playing Highway 61 Revisited in a key you've never tried before. Their debate is irrelevant. The Nobel Committee decided. Everyone else is just talking. The medal arrives in the mail, literally. The actual Nobel Prize medal shows up in a box. You open it. Heavy, gold, impressive. You turn it over in your hands. This is what Alfred Nobel's legacy looks like. This is what the committee thinks you've earned. You toss it in a drawer. Not maliciously, not disrespectfully. Just you toss it in a drawer somewhere. Maybe with other awards, maybe with random stuff. It's a medal. It's a nice medal. But it's still just a medal. Your Grammy sits in a drawer too. Awards are acknowledgements. They don't change the work. You've outlived your own categories. That's what the Nobel represents. You started as folk singer, became rock star, became whatever you became. The categories couldn't hold you, so they created a new category, Bob Dylan. And that category includes literature, apparently. Fine, you'll take it. The Nobel comes with money. A lot of money. Over $900,000. You'll do something with it. Donate it, maybe. Invest it. You don't need it. You're rich already. But the money's nice. Recognition comes with cash. That's fair. The Nobel also comes with criticism, predictably. Some writers are furious. How dare the committee give literature's highest honour to a songwriter? What about real writers? What about novelists who've laboured in obscurity? The criticism is valid and irrelevant simultaneously. The world wants to define you one last time. This is their final attempt. Bob Dylan, Nobel laureate. There, defined, categorised, understood. You're a literary figure now, not just a musician. A literary figure. You smile. They still haven't learned you can't frame smoke. The Nobel is just another label, another category, another attempt to pin you down. You accept it. You take the money. You record the required lecture. And then you keep touring. Keep changing set lists. Keep refusing to be the thing they've decided you are. The Nobel lecture is interesting, though. You actually engage with the question, are your lyrics literature? You don't answer directly. You never answer directly. But you talk around it. You cite your influences. You show your work. You let them draw their own conclusions. You quote Shakespeare. You quote Homer. You make it clear you're part of a tradition, the tradition of storytelling. Whether that's literature or music or something else, that's semantics. You tell stories. You've always told stories. The medium is secondary. Some of the Nobel Committee members probably regret the decision. The controversy was immediate. The literature world fractured. Half thought it was brilliant. Half thought it was sacrilege. You stayed out of the debate. Let them fight. You've got shows to play. The Nobel Prize makes you respectable. That's the weirdest part. Suddenly you're not just rock legend Bob Dylan. You're Nobel laureate Bob Dylan. You're studied in universities. You're quoted in literature courses. You're canonical. You're respectable. You hate being respectable. Respectability is death for an artist. Respectability means you're safe, means you're understood, means you're past tense. You've spent your entire career avoiding respectability. Now the Nobel has made you respectable. The irony is delicious, but you can still escape. You always escape. They've given you the Nobel, but they can't control what you do with it. You've taken their prize, their money, their legitimacy, and you're using it to keep doing exactly what you've always done. Tour, change, refuse definition. Years later, someone asks about the Nobel, you shrug. It's an honour. That's all you'll give them. No deep thoughts, no explanation of what it meant. Just, it's an honour. Let them read into it whatever they want. You've got the Nobel Prize, you've got the Grammy, you've got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, you've got every award the establishment can give. And you're still out there, still playing small theatres, still changing lyrics, still refusing to sing the songs the way people remember them. They wanted to honour you. They ended up proving your point. You can't be contained. Not by genre, not by category, not even by the Nobel Prize in Literature. You're smoke. You slip through their fingers every time. The medal sits in a drawer somewhere. Maybe you know where, maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. The medal is irrelevant. The work is what matters. The songs are what matter. Everything else is just people trying to figure out what to call you. You're still moving, still touring, still refusing definition. Nobel laureate, folk singer, rock star, prophet, thief. None of these capture it. All of these miss the point. You're just Bob Dylan, whatever that means. Decades blur. You look at old photos and see strangers. That young kid with the acoustic guitar, who's that? The wild-haired electric rebel, we don't recognise him. The white-faced circus master, someone else entirely. You flip through decades of your own face and see a gallery of people you used to be. Everyone's written a version of you. None of them got close. The biographies pile up. The documentaries multiply. Everyone's got their theory, their angle, their interpretation. Bob Dylan the prophet, Bob Dylan the poet, Bob Dylan the fraud. None of them are wrong. None of them are right. They're all describing shadows. Friends call you private. You call it self-defense. Being private isn't antisocial. It's survival. You learned early. Everything you say gets used against you. Gets printed, analysed, misinterpreted. Better to say nothing. Better to keep the door closed. Let them wonder. Wondering is safer than knowing. Interviews feel like interrogations. You answer in riddles. Someone asks what a song means. You tell them a story about your grandmother's house. Someone asks about your influences. You list 3 musicians who had nothing to do with anything. Someone asks a direct question. You give an indirect answer. It's not dishonesty. It's protection. Your children grow up reading about a father who never existed. They read magazine profiles describing Bob Dylan the legend. Then they come home and see Dad. Dad who watches TV. Dad who makes breakfast. Dad who's nothing like the magazine version. The disconnect must be strange for them. You've never asked. Fans want vulnerability. You give them mirrors. They want to know the real you. You show them themselves. Your songs are Rorschach tests. People hear what they need to hear. You stopped trying to control interpretation decades ago. The songs mean whatever they mean to whoever's listening. You never corrected the record because confusion is safer than clarity. All those early lies, the dead parents, the freight trains, the fake origins, you never corrected them. Why would you? The truth is boring. The lies are interesting. And besides, at this point, who's to say which is which? Some nights you wonder who you really are. Then the thought passes. It's not a question that needs answering. You're whoever you are in that moment. Tomorrow you'll be someone slightly different. Identity is fluid. You've proven that over 6 decades. You don't need to nail it down now. You've spent your life playing hide and seek with your own reflection. Every album, a new mask. Every tour, a new persona. Every decade, a new version. You're not hiding from the world. You're hiding from yourself. Or maybe you're seeking yourself. Or maybe there's no difference. The secret. There was never a mask. Just endless versions of truth. Every Bob Dylan was real. The folk singer was real. The electric rebel was real. The family man was real. The born-again Christian was real. The painter was real. The touring ghost is real. They're all true. They're all you. The multiplicity is the point. You sit in your house, whichever house you've got several, and you're surrounded by decades of evidence. Gold records on walls, awards in boxes, photos of people you've met, people you've been. It's a museum of yourself. You walk through it like a tourist. Your voice on the radio sounds like a stranger's. You flip past stations and hear yourself. The times they are a-changin', or knocking on heaven's door, or whatever. You listen for a moment. Think, that's pretty good. Then change the station. It's disconnected from you now. That voice, those songs, they're out there in the world. Independent. They're not yours anymore. People recognise you sometimes, even at 80-something. The face is famous, weathered but famous. You nod. Keep walking. If they ask for autographs, you usually sign. If they want to talk, you usually don't. You're polite but distant, friendly but unavailable. It's a practice performance. Your real friends, the ones who've stuck around, know not to ask about Bob Dylan. They know you hate talking about yourself. They know the interviews are lies, the documentaries are incomplete, the biographies are fiction. They know you, the person, not the persona. There aren't many of them left. You think about Robert Zimmerman sometimes, that kid from Hibbing. What would he think of all this? The Nobel Prize, the never-ending tour, the legend. Would he be impressed? Or would he be horrified at what he became? You don't know. You haven't been Robert Zimmerman in so long, you can't remember his perspective. The great joke is everyone thinks they know you. They've heard the songs, they've read the interviews, they've seen the documentaries. They know Bob Dylan. Except they don't. They know fragments. They know versions. They know the character you've played in public for 60 years. You've successfully hidden in plain sight, standing on stage in front of thousands, completely visible, totally hidden, giving interview after interview, saying nothing, recording hundreds of songs, revealing nothing. The ultimate trick: maximum exposure, zero revelation. Some nights you're tired of it, tired of the game, tired of the hiding, tired of being Bob Dylan. You imagine just stopping, retiring completely, becoming a regular old man doing regular old man things. But that's fantasy. You can't stop being Bob Dylan any more than you could start being him. You're stuck with it now. It's who you are. Or is it? That question again. Who are you really? The question never stops being relevant. You're Bob Dylan. You're Robert Zimmerman. You're whoever walks on stage tonight. You're whoever wakes up tomorrow morning. You're all of it. You're none of it. The multiplicity is exhausting. You look in the mirror. The face looking back is old, lined, weathered. It's been 60 years since you left Minnesota. 60 years of hiding. 60 years of running. 60 years of being someone else. And here you are, still running, still hiding, still refusing to be caught. The world will never understand you. You've made sure of that. You've contradicted yourself too many times, changed too many times, lied too many times. The picture is too fractured to ever assemble into something coherent. That was always the plan. You've won. They'll never pin you down. They'll never fully understand. They'll never be able to point at you and say, this is who Bob Dylan really is. Because there is no real Bob Dylan. There's just versions, just fragments, just reflections in funhouse mirrors. And that's exactly how you wanted it. You stand in the wings at another small venue, 80 years old, still tuning. Your fingers move slowly across the strings. The guitar's familiar. You've held thousands of guitars, they all feel the same, they all feel different. You adjust the E string, it's close enough. Perfect tuning is overrated. The lights dim, the crowd hushes. That sound, anticipation turning to silence, never gets old. You've heard it 10,000 times. Tonight it sounds new, or maybe you're just remembering better. Memory and experience blur at this age. You hear your name whispered like a prayer and think, who's that? They're calling for Bob Dylan. You're just the old man about to walk on stage. The disconnect never resolves. They see legend. You see labour. They see icon. You see tired man with guitar who needs to pee but has to wait until after the third song. You walk out, older, smaller, but alive, still hiding in plain sight. The applause is generous. They're cheering what you represent as much as what you're about to do. That's fine. Their reasons don't matter. You're here to play. That's the job. That's always been the job. The first note cracks. The crowd cheers anyway. Of course it cracks. Your voice is gravel and wire and decades of cigarettes. But the crack is human. The crack is honest. They cheer the honesty more than they'd cheer perfection. Good thing, because perfection isn't on the menu. Every song feels like an echo of a life you barely remember. Tangled up in blue. How many times? Thousands. The words are automatic now. Your brain handles them without conscious thought. You're thinking about tomorrow's drive while singing about yesterday's lovers. Muscle memory does the work. You realise you've spent decades teaching the world to stop looking for truth in idols. That's been the lesson. The constant changing, the contradictions, the refusals. You've shown them. Don't believe in legends. Don't trust icons. Don't think artists are prophets. Artists are just people who are good at making things. You'll never explain yourself. Explanation is surrender. The moment you explain, you've admitted there's something to explain. You've admitted the confusion wasn't intentional, but it was. All of it. The confusion, the contradictions, the mystery. All intentional. All strategy. All survival. The set continues. You play songs from every era. Girl from the North Country. Not dark yet. Things have changed. Each song from a different version of you. The versions stand on stage simultaneously, all singing through this one old body. Between songs, you don't speak. The audience waits for banter. They don't get it. You just nod to the band and launch into the next song. Words between songs are wasted. The songs are the words. Everything else is commentary. Someone in the front row is filming on their phone. You can see the screen glowing. They're not watching you. They're watching the screen, recording for later, for proof, for social media. You don't care. Film away. That recording will be another echo, another version, another fragment that doesn't capture anything. You end the song, nod, and fade back into darkness. No encore tonight. No big finale. You've played enough. You walk off stage the same way you walked on, quietly, without fanfare. The applause follows you into the wings. You keep walking. The band files off behind you. Good show? Bad show? Somewhere in the middle, probably. They're all in the middle now. You're not trying to create masterpieces anymore. You're just trying to keep moving. The show is the thing. The quality is secondary. In the dressing room you sit. Your knees ache. Your back aches. Everything aches. 80 years of living, 60 years of touring. The body keeps score. But you're alive. Still here. Still doing the thing you've always done. That counts for something. Tomorrow there's another city, another venue, another show. The never-ending tour continues. It'll continue until it doesn't. Until you physically can't anymore. Or until you decide to stop. But deciding to stop feels like deciding to die. So you keep going. You leave them wondering, and that's exactly how you wanted it. They'll leave tonight's show with questions. What did that mean? Why did he change that lyric? Is he okay? Why won't he talk? The questions are the point. Questions keep you alive. Answers kill legends. You get on the bus. The driver knows not to make conversation. You sit in your usual spot. The landscape passes by the window. Dark roads. American night. You've been crossing this continent for 6 decades. You know every highway. You recognise nothing. The interviews will continue. The biographies will continue. The scholarly papers and documentaries and tributes, all will continue. People will keep trying to figure you out, to solve the puzzle, to understand Bob Dylan. They'll fail. They've always failed. You've made sure they fail, because understanding would mean capturing, and capturing would mean death. You've stayed alive by staying moving, by staying multiple, by being every version of yourself simultaneously, and none of them completely. The bus rolls on, another highway, another night, another somewhere. You close your eyes. Tomorrow's show is already building in your head. Different set list, different arrangement, different version of the same old songs. Keep them guessing. Keep yourself guessing. You're 80-something years old and you're still running, still hiding, still refusing to be caught, still playing the longest con in music history. The con where you convinced everyone there was something to understand when really there was just a man making songs. Robert Zimmerman died a long time ago. Bob Dylan is a construction, a performance, a myth that became real through sheer force of will and 60 years of persistence, and underneath both of them is just a person, an old person, a tired person. A person who learned early that the only way to survive fame is to never be what they expect. You've lived a dozen lives in one lifetime. You've been everyone. You've been no one. You've given them everything and revealed nothing. It's been exhausting. It's been perfect. The show goes on. The tour continues. The mystery remains. The old man on the bus drifts towards sleep, still carrying all his secrets, still refusing to explain, still hiding in the brightest spotlight imaginable.